I would like to start this story with something gimmicky like Once Upon a Time, but I don't want to make something so horrible that happened on a little planet so long ago sound like a mere fairy tale. The worst reality of what I'm about to tell you is the fact that it did actually happen. Out just beyond the Vinegaroon cluster, there is a small solar system consisting of 10 planets. It is much like Earth's. Its sun is in the same stages of life as Sol, and on the third planet there is intelligent life. Like Earth, its surface was covered with beautiful oceans. The people of this world called their home Hotoa, which in the dominant language of Wenzhou translates to mean the beautiful jewel. Now let's turn the clock back a few centuries. The planet Hotoa developed in many ways similar to Earth. Its dominant life form was a bipedal species that evolved from a simian that closely resembled a lemur. They endured many of the same perils as mankind, such as wars, inquisitions, etc., and it was when they reached their atomic age that they began to make plans to explore the stars. And like many other species who reached this age, they had another major problem in common: pollution. While they had managed to avoid atomic holocaust, they had already begun to steer towards a path that would lead to the complete collapse of their ecosystem. The massive nuclear power plants that powered their continents provided cheap energy, but also produced massive amounts of radioactive waste. They had also discovered the nastiness of fossil fuels, and its filthy children we now know by names such as smog, sludge, and the toxic waste chemicals left over from its refinement. The saddest part of this story, though, is that the public at large never bothered to ask the big question: what were they doing with all this waste? No one seemed to notice, no one seemed to care. No one noticed as the large gray barges would leave port riding low in the water and then come back riding high. No one began to question any of it until one day every fishing vessel on the planet came back nearly empty. Nets came up either devoid of anything edible or had been slashed open. Lobster and crab pots were coming up the same way. It was as if they had been sabotaged. This went on for several weeks and no explanation could be found. It was even more mysterious when suddenly the phenomenon ceased and everything went back to business as usual. That was, at least, until the plague hit. Within the first decade of the Great Plague, roughly half of the Hotoans were either dead or slowly dying. Those who did recover would be fine for months or maybe even years, then the plague would hit them again. It was around this time in a small lab on their southern continent that a young scientist named Munksgavrushka discovered the truth. The plague was not natural, but genetically engineered. His mind raced as he began to reach for the telecom to inform his superiors, but he was too late. Alarms rang out, not just there, but all over the planet. The invasion had begun. Now, some of you may be thinking this is the Daleks, because it is kind of their motive, mass exterminations followed by total subjugation of the survivors. These invaders, however, did not come from the skies. They marched out of the oceans. On every coast, near every major capital, thousands of armored humanoid figures came up out of the surf. And inside each of those powered armors was a tank containing a denizen of the deep sea. In the center of their largest oceans, it turned out, there were trenches that ran miles deep under the surface. And in those trenches, another civilization had developed unbeknownst to the surface-dwelling population. They knew of life on land, but were rigid isolationists. That was until toxic waste canisters and garbage began raining down on their populations. They had had enough. It was decided amongst the sea dwellers that the land people must be brought to heel. The battle for the planet lasted all of a month and ended with the land-dwelling population in total servitude. The sea dwellers now bear the name Hotoan, and they call the land dwellers Shinks, which in their language means the lesser. Sadly, the story does not end here. For over the centuries, like many other species, the Hotoan sea dwellers developed a taste for power. They became drunk with it, and as their technology advanced, and they finally left the cradle of their home world, they forged an empire based on a slave trade that is now infamous throughout the galaxy. So next time you're sitting out on your ocean beach, and you're looking out over that clear crystal blue water, Please take this warning to heart. Be careful, because you never know what lurks below.